There was a 6-year-old boy that had fallen into a well shaft, and the rescue crew was there, and they got him out. But while he was being rescued, his mother was there, looking down into that well and offering him words of encouragement. But the little boy in the well kept looking up to his mother and crying out, "Mama, Mama, come down, come down." His plea sounds very much like the plea of Isaiah the prophet in the first reading this morning. God's people have all kinds of problems, and Isaiah looks up to the sky and says, "Lord, that you would rend the heavens and come down." That is a plea we make our own again and again. Lord, come down. Be with me. If you have ever felt that God is distant from you, if you've ever felt forsaken by God, you are in illustrious company, because most believers in Jesus Christ will feel that way one time or another. After all, Jesus himself said on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Lord, that you would rend the heavens and come down. The comedian Carol Burnett was telling a story on herself. She'd been in New York, she'd paid the taxi cab driver, got out of the cab and slammed the door, and the taxi began to move away, and she realized that her coat had gotten caught in that door. And there she was, running alongside of that taxi, hoping it doesn't gain too much speed. The driver didn't see her, but a pedestrian flagged down that cab driver, who came to a stop, opened the door for Carol Burnett and said to her, "Miss Burnett, I hoped you're all right." And she said, "Oh, I'm just fine, but what do I owe you for this extra mileage?" We can feel like that in life too. Like we have spent ourselves for all that we're worth. And then there's more to come. We don't know where we're going to get the strength to do it. And after having done that extra bit of mileage, we're required to pay for it. We all go through times in life that can seem rather dark or dismal or cloudy. Times of illness or loneliness or grief or falling into that same sin again and being discouraged and disappointed, or feeling all out of sorts, overwhelmed, just downright blue. And we pray, Lord, that you would rend the heavens and come down. Isaiah and God's people had all kinds of problems when that reading was written. One of the problems was that some of the people were flirting with sin. And let me tell you, it never pays off. It is most dangerous to flirt with sin. But that's what they were doing, as people in our own day continue to do. There was a story in the news about a scuba diver who had gone down into the water and gotten sucked in by an intake. and he was shot down a long tube and ended up in a canal outside the factory. And he was spotted by a guard and rescued, and fortunately, he was all right. But the spokesperson for the company had this to say to the news: that intake was surrounded by boys with warnings to steer clear. And that intake was protected by a cap that was 70 feet by 70 feet. And the only way somebody could get in there was to avoid all the warning buoys, to go underneath that cap, to look down into that tube, and then be sucked in. What an illustration of sin. There are the warnings all around us, but we're curious, or we think this time it will be different. And we get closer and closer, ignoring all the safeguards, and then we're surprised when we get sucked in. We shouldn't be surprised at all. We knew that it would happen. And we pray, Lord, that you would rend the heavens and come down and save me from this foolishness of sin. And God has come down. That is the feast of Christmas, where the Son of God became the Son of Mary and was born to suffer, die, and rise out of love for us. The heavens were rent, and God came down. There was a man and woman that met each other when they were both 18. A year later, they got married. 6 years later, with 3 children, she was very discouraged. And one day she looked around and saw all the dishes to be washed, all the laundry to be done, the 3 children noisy and scrapping. She put on her coat, she walked out the door, and never intended to come back again. She would call periodically to check on the children, but she would never tell her husband where she was. He hired a private investigator who found out she was staying in a motel in Des Moines. He made the decision to go visit her, and he was scared to death because either she would accept him or she would reject him with that knock on the door. He prayed, he knocked, she opened the door, they embraced, and she collapsed in his arms. And he took her home. And after they'd gotten the kids to bed, he said to her, "Honey, I just have to ask you, with all the telephone calls that I made to you, how come you wouldn't come home until I showed up and knocked at your door?" And she answered this way: "Because with the telephone calls, your words of love for me might just have been words.